Okay, so welcome. Thanks for joining me for this look at working with ArcGIS Online. AGOL is a web-based platform with tools for not only making maps, but for also collecting data and putting these things all together to tell a story. But first, I'm going to just introduce myself. My name is Molly Webb, and I'm a GIS programmer on the data services team at the University Libraries. An outline of today's session. We're going to be looking at the AGOL platform, what it is, and what are some different ways that you can use it. How do you log in and get started with working with maps? Resources for getting more information and training on AGOL, and then we'll wrap up with any questions or an open discussion. So, what is ArcGIS Online? So it's also known as AGOL or AGOL. I've heard it pronounced both ways. It kind of depends on who you're talking to. At its core, it's a web browser-based geographic information system, or GIS. When we are talking about geographic information, what we mean is information that's tied to a specific place on Earth. We can link the information to a location, either a single location like a point on a map, or maybe an area of the Earth like we see countries and counties on a map. So in your web browser, you're going to log on to a specific ArcGIS Online site. It's WashU specific for our organization. You access it with your WUSTL key. You can start with a basic map application or story map template and go from there. There's lots of different options for users to work from. And there's also a ton of solid documentation and community content for AGOL for learning the basics and then extending the functionality and looking up specific questions that you might have. The most common starting point in AGOL is a map. And this starts with a base map, which contains reference information like streets and parks. So we can see that base map kind of under this main content window here. And then on top of this base map, you put layers of information like building footprints, which are represented by polygons, like these gray polygons we see on the map here. Walking paths could be represented with lines. So we have some blue lines here that represent ADA accessible paths. And then bus locations that could be represented by points on a map, like these circular points showing us where the shuttles, the different WashU shuttles are. So these layers get drawn on top of each other based on their shared spatial location because the GIS knows where this data should be. And that's the whole concept of GIS, is where is this information? So we have the WashU campus map shown here, which was created as a map in AGOL, what you see in the middle portion of the screen. And then that map was added to a web app, which gives us this header and this sidebar here with the layers list that can be turned on and off based on what you want to see on your map. Then also, if you look at the right side of the screen here, you can also toggle the legend on and off, which tells us which symbols mean what on the map, like which color belongs to which WashU shuttle route. So if you have your map, and actually even if you don't have a map, you can move to the different web experience templates known as story maps. So story maps, you can take your map and add additional content like images, text, or video to create a narrative that, like I said, it might contain a map or it might not. This example on the screen here was created by the WashU Sustainability Department as a walking tour of the different sustainable features on Danforth campus. As you scroll through the content on the left, the map on the right refocuses to the different zoom or zooms to the different locations of interest here represented by these blue pins. A story map success story from the libraries is the Mapping LGBTQ St. Louis application, which has recently undergone a massive transformation from the older legacy AGOL web application style to the modern story map template. So I encourage you to check that out if you get a chance. And these slides, which will be distributed, has links to all of these examples at the end, so you can check those out for yourself. Another example of the modern story map template is this story map entitled Monumental Anti-Racism, which incorporates both location maps and then text and images of those locations. Another way to augment a map is on AGOL is creating a specific application that has a purpose, like gathering data. For example, on this screen, we have an application that was used to collect spatial data. The interface on the tablet, which is shown down here on the left, allows users to draw their own points, paths, or polygons like the ones we see on the map on the right-hand side. This is great for gathering information out on the field, like on a mobile device or a tablet. And then we can add these maps and other information graphics to a dashboard, like the now very famous Johns Hopkins COVID-19 dashboard, which was created using ArcGIS Online and provides information on COVID cases and deaths at many different geographical levels. Now, there's a lot of information gathering and processing that happens on the back end here, but the platform itself is the same AGOL platform that we have access to here at WashU. Many WashU faculty have discovered both the power and the ease of use of ArcGIS Online, and they have started incorporating this into their courses. They may ask students to create a story map for a project instead of a final paper, kind of like these examples here on the left. Or they could do something like use a shared map to that all the students in a course could use to gather and display information on locations, like this map here, where students added their own points for different archaeological sites around the world. AGOL was even used as the base platform to create an archive and narrative of life on campus during the last school year. So when so many things were different and disrupted for the WashU community, AGOL was used to record the different aspects of what was happening with both students and faculty in the WashU community. So now that I've shown you a couple of the cool things that you can create using AGOL, we can talk about the details of how you actually start using this platform. So you start by just opening up a web browser, so Chrome, Firefox, Safari, whatever you're used to, and you go to the URL woostel.maps.arcgis.com. From here, you click on the blue button for Washington University, which will take you to the Woostel Key login page where you can enter your Woostel credentials. If by chance you just see an ArcGIS login screen like this, you can click the Your Organization's URL button, and then that will give you an opportunity to enter in Woostel at the beginning of woostel.maps.arcgis online. Hit continue, and then you'll be taken to the Woostel Key login. If you're logging in for the first time, you're going to be prompted to fill in your name and some other information for your platform, but then subsequent logins will just take you right to the Washington University in St. Louis homepage with our gallery, where we have some selected projects highlighted here. The key that I want to show you on this page is this top navigational bar, where you can get to your profile in the upper right, your content, which is all of the items that you've created yourself, your groups, which is any groups within Washington and within our WashU organization that you're members of that allow us to share content between users. Or you could just go ahead and start making a map right away. So instead of looking at some static images on the page, I'm going to go ahead and just open up my web browser and show you exactly what this looks like. Okay. So I'm just going to open up a regular old Chrome window here, and I'm going to type in woostel.maps.arcgis.com. Okay, prompted to sign in. I'm going to click on Washington University. And since I'd logged in before, right before we started this presentation, it went ahead and just passed through my credentials. So I didn't have to enter my WUSTL key, but typically you would enter your WUSTL key if you were logging in. So here I can see that gallery, just like I showed in the slides, and this top navigation bar, which shows us the different content areas we can go to. Okay. So from here, what I want to do is I'm just going to start a new map. So I'm going to click map up here at the top. Now this opens up with a blank map that has a base map, which again is just a underlying layer that gives us reference information like state boundaries, city locations, and so on and so forth. If we scroll in or zoom in using the zoom button, we'll see that the information changes based on our zoom level. One thing I wanted to show is that ArcGIS Online actually has two different styles of map viewer. This map viewer that we're looking at now is called Classic Map Viewer. And then we also have a new map viewer. So if I click on Open in New Map Viewer up here at the top, it switches to the same map, but a little bit different interface on either side. We can see that now we have these navigation bars on both the left and the right-hand side of the map, whereas before pretty much everything was on the left side of the map here. So to get started, I'm going to show you the steps on the new map viewer style here. And if you want to follow along later, I do have these steps kind of listed out in our slides as well, if you want to go back and reference it at a later date. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add some layers. Now, the layers for the map can come from so many different places. The good thing about ArcGIS Online is that there's a lot of ready-made spatial content that Esri has curated for us in a program called the Living Atlas. So to get started, we're going to add some ready-made layers from Living Atlas. I'm going to click on Add Layer. And then I'm going to add layer from, click this drop down here, Living Atlas. Okay, now I've decided for our example here that I want to do, I want to end up at a story map telling information about current wildfires in the US, since we are going through a pretty intense wildfire season right now. So in the search for layers box, I'm just going to search for wildfires. Okay, and the layers that fit that description kind of pop up here. You can scroll through to see which ones are available. We can see that this layer, current wildfires, was developed by Esri. And I should have said at the beginning, but Esri is actually the larger company that builds the ArcGIS Online platform, as well as some of the really popular desktop GIS applications like ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro. So not only do they build these software platforms, but they're also a data provider too, or content provider. So when you search for things in Living Atlas, you will see a lot of layers that were provided by Esri, which are fairly authoritative. They either curate the content themselves or they pull it from other sources, government agencies and things like that. So you can be fairly confident about the accuracy of the data coming from Living Atlas, especially if it is from Esri. So to add this layer in, I'm just going to click the plus sign here. And then in our map, we can see that now we've got a series of points that show different wildfire locations. So I'm just going to click the back button. And if I want to see, okay, I see a bunch of different styles of points and there are a bunch of different sizes. So what does that mean? If I click on the more options here, then I can do a bunch of different things. I can zoom or rename. But then if I close that back up, and then I click on the legend icon here, this shows me what these symbols actually mean. When I zoom in further, I can see that I've got these areas on the map. And so those are the current perimeters of the wildfires. And so those are shown once you get past a certain zoom level. All right, so we've got points that are sized by the number of acres in the fire. And then we also have these parameters here. Now, using the beauty of GIS and putting layers on top of each other, I'm going to pick another layer to add because these fires aren't happening in a vacuum. They actually are impacting people and the areas surrounding the fires. So let's see if we can add some population data so we can get an idea of how many people are being impacted by these fires. So I'm going to go back to layers and I'm going to click add layer again. Click the drop down to go to Living Atlas. And then in my search bar, I'm going to search for population. Okay. So the very first result here is the ACS, which is the American Community Survey, Population Variables Boundaries. And I think that's enough to get us started. So I'm going to go ahead and click the plus sign to bring that into my map. Okay, so immediately I'm seeing a bunch of purple polygons here. I'm not quite sure what that symbology means. So let's see if we can figure that out. I'm going to click the legend. And so the legend is telling me that what we're looking at here is the percent of population independent age groups. And that's defined as being either under 18 or over 65. So the polygons are colored based on the percentage of the population within those groups. All right, so this is all well and good, but I brought that layer in and now those purple polygons are on top of my points and I can't see what's happening underneath. So I'm going to go back to my layers view, and then I'm just going to click and drag my layers above my population polygons. So those points and those fire parameters are on top of my population layers now. I can see them a little bit better. Okay, another thing that I want to point out here is that with our population variables, these layers are actually scale dependent. So I can see that when I brought in the population values, I got the state boundaries, I got the county boundaries, and I also got the census tract boundaries. Right now at this zoom level, we're seeing this data by county, but then if I zoom in a little bit more, see if we can get to a better location here to show you. Okay, there we go. So now as I zoom in a little bit more, then the county is essentially grayed out or disabled. It's not visible now. And what is visible is the census tracts, which are a smaller spatial unit. If I zoom out again, we go back to the counties and then a couple more zooms out, then that takes us to the state level. So there we can see that this the population data is being shown at the state level now. So setting that visibility is something that you do in the properties of this layer. And so when you click on the properties, that properties pane is going to show up on the right-hand side. And on the right-hand side in the properties, you can do things like adjust the transparency of the layers. So if I want this to be, say, a little bit more transparent so we can see the reference information down below, we can do that here. And then also here is where we're setting that visibility range. So we want this layer to show up at a higher visibility. We can see the little arrow there showing us where we are now. And then if we zoom in here, then we can see that this is the zoom range for the counties layer, and so on and so forth. So a lot of different things you can do in the properties, as well as you can change this style. Say you're not crazy about this purple color ramp here. Well, you can click on style options and then choose between one of the many different color ramps that they have available here. Okay, so I'm going to close this window for now. Cancel out of that. So we can just have our maps. So a couple other things dealing with the layers in the maps. The first thing that we could do is if we say don't want to see all of these points on the map, we can use filtering to only show a subset of the points. So I'm going to go over here to the left to the filter button and make sure that my current incidence wildfires layer is highlighted here. I can tell that it's selected by this blue bar here on the layer. And I can add a filter. Say I want to only show fires that have impacted a lot of residences. So I can build an expression saying, show me everything where the residence is destroyed is greater than, and let's just say 5. Okay, and we can save that. And now we're only seeing a subset of those incidents on our map. Another thing that we can adjust is when we click on layers, a certain amount of information shows up in the pop-up. And this particular pop-up is for this incident. And as we scroll through the other pop-ups, it shows us any other information that is also kind of in the vicinity of the area that we clicked. So this also happens to be in Stevens County, Washington. And here's some information about the county. And then it was also adjacent to Lincoln County, Washington. And here's some information about the county. So pop-ups are another really helpful thing to include in your map. And if you go over to the other side here, you can see the configure pop-ups button. And this is how you can manage what is actually shown on the map when a user clicks on a particular feature. Now, in terms of actually seeing what information is available in this map, and this is a pretty key concept for GIS in general, is that GIS layers are made up of 2 parts. The first part is the shapes, the points, lines, and polygons that we see on the map. The second part of GIS data is the underlying data table, which has information about each one of the features that we're seeing on the map. So if I expand the properties of the current wildfire incidents and click Show Table, then a table appears at the bottom, and each one of these records corresponds to a point that we're seeing on the map. In our map, we've got features shown on the map, and then those features will have a corresponding record in the underlying data table, which tells us which information we have about those particular points. So the information that we have for each feature varies depending on who created the information and what information was available when the data was created. Okay. Another thing that I wanted to show is the bookmarking feature. So the whole map right now is focusing on the lower 48 states, but say we want to focus in on this like Northern California area here, and we want to be able to get back to it quickly, we can set a bookmark. So the bookmarks bar is, or the bookmarks button is over here on the left-hand side. We can add a bookmark. So I can say add bookmark, and I'll call this Northern California. Add. And so now, no matter where we've scrolled in our map, we can go back to our bookmarks, hit Northern California, and it automatically takes us right back there. So that's a good kind of basic map that we have going on. We've done a little bit of work, so I want to make sure I save it. This blue dot right here tells me that I have unsaved changes in the map. So I'm going to click that save icon and click save. Since this was a new map, I'm going to say, give it a title, map, wildfires, AGOL workshop. I can add some tags and a description if I want. I'm going to skip those for now and just click Save Map. Now the map has been saved. All right, awesome. So the next thing we can do is we could do something like add our own layers to the map. So the 2 layers that we've added so far, those were ready-made layers that Esri had created, but say you want to bring your own information in. So I have a file here. I'm just going to open this up. This is a CSV file. And it's pretty simple. All it is a list of about 100 or so national parks in the US with their latitude and their longitude, with their locations. Okay, so just a standard CSV file here with latitudes and longitudes. We could also have a list of addresses that would work too. So I'm going to go back to my main content, and I can do that by clicking on this button up here in the upper left-hand corner and going back to content. This is going to be my list of everything that I've created, and there'll be a lot of stuff here because I've worked in AGOL a lot. But if I want to create a new layer with those national parks, I'm going to click New Item, and then I'm going to add a file from my device and navigate to that National Parks CSV. It's going to ask me, do I want to actually create a spatial layer from this data, or do I want to just add the CSV to make that available online? I actually want to create a layer. So I'm going to click the first option and then click Next. Layer. It'll do a little bit of work to see what data is coming in. It's going to automatically recognize the fields and their different data types. So we've got park name, which is a text or a string, and then we have latitude and longitude, which are both doubles or numeric. Hit next. And then it's going to say, how do you want me to recognize location in this file? Well, the latitude value is going to come from the latitude column, and the longitude value is going to come from the longitude column. Okay, we'll hit next. What do I want to call this? I'll just keep it US National Parks. I'm going to save it in my content. This is my username here, and I can add tags and a summary if I want to do that as well. So let's hit save. So if you have your data compiled with that location information, it's really easy to bring it into ArcGIS Online. So now what I have is a feature layer. And so this is a layer that can be added to any map. So let me go back to my content. And then I'm going to go back to the map that I just created. I'll open it up in the new map viewer. And now I'll click on Add Layer. This time I want to search in my content. I'm not going to click down and go to Living Atlas. I'm going to search in my own content. And here's that National Parks layer that I just created. So I'll click on the plus sign to add that in. And I can see now that the national parks have been added in with this kind of default symbology of this red orb looking symbol. I'm not too crazy about that symbol, so I'm going to click on edit layer style, click on style options. And if I click on this little symbol, then a bunch of different symbols will show up. For basic shapes, that's your circle, square, etc. I'm going to go to the government classic symbols. And I looked down here before, there was a really nice kind of tree icon that I want to use. Here we go. So here's the tree icon. And so if I want to make that a little bit bigger, I can. And then I'll close out of that and I'll say done and done again. And so now I've got all my national parks relative to my fire incidents, and I'm showing those on the map as well. So just showing you that there's a lot of different ways that you can actually get information onto your map. I'm going to go ahead and save my map since I had some changes, and now I'm ready to add this to something else. I could add it to a web app for data collection, or I could add it to a story map. So let's go ahead and add it to a story map and see what that process is like. Okay, so right here from my map window, I can click on this icon here, Create App. And then this is going to let me choose what kind of app I want to create. I can create an instant app, an experience builder, which is other different types of apps, or I can create a story map or a dashboard. I'm going to do story map. So this is going to launch the story builder. Okay. So from here, it's a good idea to kind of have either like an idea of kind of how you want your story map to look and have some content created, some text written already, so you know what you want to put in your map. Right now for this demo, we're just gonna kind of go on the fly a little bit. So I'm gonna call this mapping wildfires in the US. Relative to population. So this is going to be our title and subtitle. We can add a cover image if we want. So I'm going to click on this add cover image or video. And I'm going to browse to this kind of dramatic wildfires image that we have going on here of some fires kind of approaching a home. And I'm going to add that in. It's going to appear horizontally across the top. And if I want to, we're only seeing a portion of the image here. I can click on the options button, and this lets us change the focus. So say I want to change the focus down to this house here that's in danger. So it shows a little bit more of a picture of the impact of these wildfires on the human population here. So adding a cover image, this could be a video too if you wanted to, that's totally fine. And then it's added our map in here. Now it gives us some different options for placement if we want the map to be kind of front and center, if we want it to be large, taking up the whole screen, we have a lot of options there. And then from here, it lets you add additional content. So, so this little plus button appears. And say I wanted to add kind of an image with a little bit of side text. So let me stick another image in there. I'm going to browse my files and stick in another image. Dramatic firefighter image here, and say I want this to be kind of like a sidebar with some text on the side. And I do have a little bit of sample text that I pulled, just some lorem ipsum here, and I could just grab some of that and put that in and start filling out my content here. So I could say firefighter in the Bobcat fire, and so on and so forth. Okay, so another item that you can add, let's get our little plus sign back here. is you can add kind of a larger portion of the experience called a sidecar. And so this can either be an element that's right in the middle of your map with a floating panel, or it can have a docked panel that's on the side. I'm going to choose docked panel. So this is going to be a large media area here that can be a map, image, or video, and then additional text here on the side. I'm going to choose to add another version of my map here. And what I want to do in this particular map is I want to make sure that this one zooms in to that Northern California area that we had established before. So I'm going to zoom into that area and I'm going to say place map. So now when this map appears, it's going to be zoomed into that area of interest. And then again, let me go back and grab some of this sample text and put that here to fill out the page a little bit more. Okay, so there we have our sidecar, and we continue to add images and text as we want to tell this story going down. So a couple more things in this story map creator window here. If you click on design, it shows you the different types of overall designs. We've chosen the cover for the minimal design, which basically gives us that big image and then the stacked elements from top to bottom. You can add a navigation and credits. And then the main thing I wanted to show is this theme. So right now it's showing this kind of white background with this dark text, and maybe I'm more interested in kind of a darker theme, dark background with lighter text. So you can mess around and experiment with the different themes of your map, your story map. Another thing that we can do is preview. So I can preview to see how my story map is going to look for the users, whether they be on their full screen desktop or if they're just on a regular desktop here. Down here is a tablet view, so you can see how that's going to look for users on tablets. And then finally on a smartphone. So that's kind of a handy tool, because we know that folks aren't necessarily going to be just using desktop for these items. They probably will be using their phones and tablets. So we want to make sure that everything is going to look nice on any device that the user would be looking for. Finally, after we've finished all of this up and we're happy with the way that our story map looks, we can publish it. So we just click on publish. It's important that we set the sharing level that we want. If we're still working on the map, we can set it to private, so only we can see it until we're ready to release it to the public. We can release it to only people in the WashU AGOL organization, so they'll have to log in to see it. That's fine. Or we can set it to everyone, so it's going to be public to the open internet. We can also share it with groups. So I mentioned groups earlier before. Groups are a way to work with people, a limited amount of people within the WashU organization. So we can also just share this with groups. With a particular group, so that that they can see it and they can make changes to it as well. Now, another thing that I wanted to mention about sharing is that not only can we share with the WashU organization, but AGOL has recently bolstered its sharing across organizations. So if you're working with another entity like a community partner and they have ArcGIS Online and you're both working on a project together, we can set up a sharing relationship between our organization and their organization, and it's a good way of sharing content back and forth. So just to kind of wrap up here, for AGOL, it's a great option to kind of get your feet wet with GIS because there is no additional software to install. It's all browser based. There's a lot of different data sets available for you to play around with, or you can add your own data as we looked at in the demo. There's different, if you want to get more into the analysis of your data, there's different analysis options, and it works really well for showing things on the web. We saw that it looked, our template looked great both on the desktop, on a device, and on a phone. A con is that you do have to be connected to the internet to use it. So some kind of internet connectivity, um, you have to have that. And this is going to be an issue. You know, if you're out in the field wanting to gather data, you might have to make some additional, have some additional infrastructure there for data gathering. There's limited control on the output, meaning that if you want to make printed maps and things like that, it's a little bit clunkier. It's really designed for web outputs. For printed maps and more intense spatial analysis, we recommend exploring the desktop options for GIS. And then also some of the functions do consume credits, which is basically kind of like the currency of ArcGIS Online. Right now, for the WashU organization, we have quite a few credits, so it doesn't usually end up being too much of an issue. But if you're working with large data sets, it can kind of take the credits that we have as a group. So that's always something that we keep an eye on the data services team. Thanks for watching this video.